Hey, okay, welcome. This is Alberta Homeschooling Association's webinar, Help, My Child Won't Do the Work. And it's one of our most popular webinars all year. I wonder why. And hopefully you'll get some suggestions, and maybe my goal for you is to relax and realize that you have many chances to teach what you're teaching. It does not have to be done in a day. It does not have to be done this year. It will come, absolutely. Okay, so I hope you're feeling relaxed at the end of this. So my name is Judy Arnall, and I am certified in brain and child development. That's actually my work. I've worked for Alberta Health Services for 13 years teaching parenting and child development. So maybe tonight I want to add a little bit of what I know in terms of brain development and when kids are ready to accept different types of learning. So I'm a bit of an idealist, but I'm also a realist too. I have 5 of my own children. They are all adults now. The baby, the last one, is taking his first grade 10 math class right now, and he is approaching it with gusto and gumption, and none of my kids used to be like that, so I'll tell you, we were a family of unschoolers. But what I teach is non-punitive parenting, so I do not believe in punishments in parenting or in education. I believe that kids want to learn, they love learning, and when we punish them to learn, we are not only impairing our relationships, but we're also teaching them that learning is not a fun, wonderful thing. It is, and it really is. So I've written all these books. They're bestsellers, and that's my work. So one book is on non-punitive parenting, and the other book is on how to handle anger in parenting and our children's anger. And then I've been facilitating parent groups for the last 23 years. So I've compiled a lot of tips from other parents who don't punish in handling every possible situation in attachment parenting tips. And my newest book is Unschooling to University, and I'll talk to you about why we slid down that path. So you probably found us somewhere in Facebook. And you guys are just awesome. Whether you're a first-time homeschooler or this is your second year and you're trying to look for some new tips to motivate your newly 1-year older child, welcome. You deserve a tip jar on your table. And I even tried a wife's tip jar in my laundry room. I put that $50 bill in there because I thought, I want more of those. Didn't get any, so no laundry being done in my house. And I love teachers. I think they work so hard. They deserve a tip jar too on their table. A lot of teachers really want kids to succeed, and it's just wonderful. So, yeah. Okay. I think it's really important to realize children learn not just through what you're teaching them, not through the workbooks, not through the textbooks or your curriculum. They learn in many places. This was Inspiring Education. It was a symposium done in 2009 and 2011 through Alberta Education. And they asked everyone who went to the symposium, where do people learn? And you can see school is only one of many places that children and adults learn at. And the younger they are, the more they learn through hands-on experiences like this. This is a science center. I think it's in Edmonton, actually. Not sure. Anyways, that's the point. And children are born learners. If they breathe, they learn. From 0 to age 6, we let them play, and they learn so much through play. They learn how to walk, how to talk. Many learn to read even before they go to school, and they will continue to learn to read even when they don't go to school. We know unschoolers. Every unschooler learns to read without being taught. Not a taught thing. It's a developmental thing. So But at age 6, we say, okay, children, you can't learn what you want to learn through play. You have to learn through school what we want you to learn. Now, I realize not everyone's going to unschool, but this is what unschooling looks like. And just so you know, children learn everything they need to learn through play, through their own initiative, otherwise of what they would learn in school. And many do a more formal, they come back to the school track about age 17, 18 when their executive function's a bit more developed. And they get the credentials they need and go off to post-secondaries. They really do. So that's our story. I brought my kids home so I had 5 kids. The 2 oldest were grade 2 and grade 1, and one had special needs, and I took them out of school thinking, okay, I can't do any worse than a school that's about slated to close and doesn't care anymore. So I brought them home and we started homeschooling. I got curriculum, and by November of that year, that's why we present this in November, they stopped listening to me. I'm good old mom. I'm safe. I'm not going to not love them the rest of their lives if they don't crack those books open. So, so we got to the point where they were in tears. I was in tears. They weren't listening. They weren't doing the work. And I thought, okay, if I'm going to yell at you every day, I may as well just put you back into school, because this is totally wrecking our relationship and not what I want. And I didn't put them back into school, but more and more, because I had a toddler underfoot that I had to keep busy. I had a preschooler that I had to keep busy and keep entertained and safe. More and more, we were homeschoolers that never got around to doing the assignments, and it just slid. And more, I would just watch the kids play, and they learned amazing things. Everything they need to know, they learned through their play. So we made that decision. Are we going to put curriculum on top, or are we going to put our relationship on top? And kids can always learn fractions. They can always learn French. They can always learn polynomials, but you only have 12 years to cement that relationship. And that is what's most important in life. And it's not a relationship that you want to keep on yelling and threatening. And you want to build it. You want to have a good relationship so that you have those teachable moments and your kids actually listen to you. And here's my kids now. Very proud of them. This one hasn't quite graduated yet. I got his picture done, but he's just doing all his maths and sciences now in high school. He's done English and social. So I have 3 university graduates. One's a master's student, one is in the middle of university, and one is, I hope, about to go. We unschooled. So we played anywhere from 8 years to 12 years of their education. They self-directed what they wanted to learn, how they learned it, whether they wanted to do assignments or whether they wanted to learn more hands-on. It was all good. And for the most part, when they did more paper assignments, they remembered it for their exams, passed their exams, and then it left their brain. So the more people absorb things and experience them, the better they learn, actually. I'm going to just turn off my video now because I find it really distracting, and I'll come on in the end and say, I just put it on so you can see me. So we were unschoolers, but we still had structure and commitments. We had things to do. As you can see, this is what my 12-year-old daughter wrote. She did not get to her speech, and she came up with all the reasons why. But hey, that's good writing. So it's important to know about brain development. When your child's born, these are their neurons, and for the most part, most of them are not connected. The ones that are connected keep their heart, their lungs, their motor skills going. And then after, everything they learn after birth is experiential. And all that experiential learning when you talk to them and you say, goo, 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 that builds these connections between brain cells. And by the time they're age 7, their brain is full of these. As you can see, there are so many brain cells here connected. But this is not sustainable. The brain has to start pruning to have very strong connections. And it does this starting at age 7. So what children don't use anymore, they lose. So say your child's in French immersion for kindergarten, grade 1. If you take them out in grade 2, if you take them out for a year, they probably won't lose a lot. But if you took them out for 2-3 years, they would lose most of what they had known. So they have to continually use things in order to retain them. So the model of learning, which we have in our minds, where we open up their brains, pour in all this information, knowledge, skills, attitudes, zip up the brains, doesn't work that way at all. It's more what they absorb, what they know, and what they retain from continual use. So when I asked my kids what if they remembered all the science experiments we did before age 12, they didn't. I asked them all the field trips we went on for homeschooling. We went on homeschool days. We went on specific classes the homeschool center ran. They didn't remember any of those. They didn't remember their childhood friends, those specific birthday parties. None of that they remembered before age 12, 13, puberty. So if you think you're opening up their brains, pouring in information, checking it off, you're not. They're not going to retain that. So why fight over it? What they are going to start retaining is anything they learned during the teenage years, age 13 and on. Most of that they do remember, they do retain, and they use it. And that's why a lot of subjects are very circular, they're spiral. So everything my kids learned in high school, they would have got in grades 1 to 9. So if they miss something, if your kids miss something, if they're not doing assignments, do not worry. They will get that again in high school when they actually remember it and will use it for post-secondary. Okay, so adult attentiveness is the most important. Talking, reading, singing, responding to your child, that's what builds their language. So the schools are mostly concerned about English and math skills and English skills. And the rest are all pretty well location specific. They're nice to know, but they're not needs to know. Now, the beauty about Alberta programs of study is that in Alberta, there are certain outcomes that children must learn, but you can teach them any method you want. It can be a self-directed method, it can be a play, it can be workbooks, whatever you want to use that they meet these outcomes is great. So for example, this is grade 1 science, creating color. One of the outcomes is identify colors in a variety of natural and manufactured objects. So you at home might give your kids a blob of white Play-Doh and some colored markers. You roll it out and you say, okay, go to it, draw something. And they learn about colors that way. Another homeschooling family might take kids to an art museum and show them colors in the pictures. They learn colors that way. There's so many ways to teach outcomes that if what you're doing, if it's mostly paperwork, you need to find something more fun, a way to teach it or to do it. Now you gotta consider development, their learning style, and their temperament. And let's go through this and talk about this for a bit. This is my son. He was 4 years old at his son's graduation. He makes no beans about the fact he is bored and wants out of there. Okay, now sorry, I'm gonna give you a minute to just read this and I'm gonna go get more water and I'll be right back. Okay, so In school, the most efficient way to deliver curriculum to a classroom of 30 kids is through paper-based resources. But you don't have to. You're not doing school. When you bring your kids home, you can do whatever you want. You can customize things for your child in the way they learn. Do they learn through movies? Watch videos. Do they learn through picture books? Get some picture books from the library. Do they learn through doing? Get them to do. Best ways to learn. So let's kind of look at development a bit, and I'll tell you what's the best way to teach kids for different age groups. I'm not going to cover the toddlers, babies, and preschoolers because pretty well you have kids older than that. But just keep in mind that children learn how to walk, to talk, to learn to use the toilet all on their own without being taught. As they get older, they also learn to read, to write, to do arithmetic, to write essays, and do advanced mathematics all on their own too without being taught. And it's because the brain gets better. So in development, the brain develops from the bottom of the brain to the top of the brain and from the back to the front. So babies, the cerebellum, the brainstem, and the occipital lobe are most developed, what we call the bottom brain functions. These work really well, but not much of this works in babies. In toddlers, the next part of the brain to develop is the temporal lobe. As you can see, language recognition kicks in, and memory, and visual memory. So very much in toddlers. So that's why most people's earliest memories are about 3, 4. They don't remember much before that. And it's because language has to kick in for memories to really solidify. Preschoolers, the parietal lobe is most sensitive here. Again, the learning the language, these two are very important in language learning, and that's when I said from 0 to 5, most children have a very good ability to learn any language in the world without getting too confused. That window is very sensitive. When children start first grade, think first grade frontal. Frontal lobe is most developed here. That's these higher order skills: thinking, planning, problem solving, movement, personality, and emotional processing. This is where your child is going to learn a lot, and especially the prefrontal lobe in puberty. This is a development of the executive function of the prefrontal cortex, which is here. And as you can see, from birth to age 3, there's not much self-control there or focus, not much at all. From 3 to age 6, it really goes up. As you can see, it takes that first big leap. And that's why children don't start formal school until age 6, because they need a certain level of brain function to sit there and listen and learn. The next big stage is 13 to 17, that final leap. And you will notice that when your kids are 13 to 17, they will be much more able to sit and do assignments, to concentrate on the computer, to pay attention to Zoom meetings. Before that, it's hit and miss, and it's mostly development. I will post in the group. There was a very good article in today's Parent Magazine last month on why kids have such trouble sitting in front of computers to pay attention and do assignments until they're teen years. It's just development. It's not a good way for them to learn. Even Alberta Education says no online classes before grade 5. And that's even pretty, pretty young. So this is from 0 to 3, the growing brain in Washington. And this is from the Brain Story from the Palix Foundation of Alberta Family Wellness Initiative. I really like this. This is Edgar Dale's Cone of Learning. He says after 2 weeks, we tend to remember 10% of what we read, 20% of what we hear, 30% of what we see. So from this webinar, in 2 weeks, you're going to remember barely anything. 30% of it, if I'm lucky. But if you actually prepared this webinar and you were here giving it, you would remember 90% of it. So we process and remember so much more of what we're actually doing. So if you go down from here, not much, here a bit more, here a lot more, and here is where the hands-on experiential learning really drives home to permanent learning for children. Okay, one interesting study from Dr. Peter Gray. He's a psychologist who teaches psychology in Boston College. He says the least structured education children had from ages 0 to 18, the more likely they would be to go on and succeed at post-secondary schools. So he's saying both for school and structured homeschooling, the earlier and longer, the less likely they would go on to post-secondary. Very interesting. So as you can see, from birth to age 5, language is all important. You really want to concentrate on language development. So reading to your children, talking to them, having conversations, listening to them, using your really expansive vocabulary is what's going to build their language. That's very, very good. And then from ages 5 on, they start learning more content. But remember, kids don't remember much before age 12 when their abstract thinking skills and executive function kicks in. So once that prefrontal cortex of the puberty years really develops, that's when kids are going to remember what they learn, and they're much more willing to sit down and do assignments. So we homeschool parents used to say, if the kids are crying, we stop for the day. If mom's crying, we stop for a year. If we're both crying, we drop it. Homeschooling should be relaxed and it should be fun. You want to make sure learning is what's important. It should be fun. Now, children have different learning styles, and that's kind of tied into intelligences, multiple intelligences. Some children are interpersonally geared. They like learning with groups, with other kids around. So the more you can do group things with them, games they love. They learn a lot through games and playing with other children. They're extroverts. Some children learn best through linguistic formats. So they like word problems, they like different things. Some children learn through their body. So I had a son like this, and when I taught him, these are 2-foot letters I cut out. This is our carpet. I put masking tape here. And I would get him to jump from the 2 to the 3 and back to multiply it. And then jump from the 2 to the 2. And then jump from the 2 to the 7. And then he would sit down for the 0, and then he would do the same for the 8s. And that's the way I taught him multiplication. I taught him this, and when he was 7, 8, 9, couldn't remember it. Finally, he was using a calculator in the teen years, and he didn't need to remember it anymore. But the more you can get kids to skip count. We did this at a playground on, a lot of school playgrounds have this on their playground. Asphalt is painted. So you can get them to jump to skip count. Or we did it on the trampoline. That's kids learn through their bodily kinesthetic ways. Music is one way to teach the times table. Yeah, I know this is a cassette tape. But, sometimes some kids, you can reach them through music. Some kids are more nature orientated, so reach them through items from nature. Some kids are very introspective. They're the introverts. All you have to do is plunk something like this on the table and let them explore it on their own. They don't want teaching. They don't want instruction. They just want to try things out, like what happens if they put rice in the square and then they pour the rice into a cone. Does 3 of those cones go into a square? They learn by manipulating objects on their own. There's a lot of spatial ways to teach. I used a lot of this. Lego was really helpful. This is x squared plus 1x plus 3. So even in the teen years, I used a lot of these things to help them with algebra. You can get these things at stores like Mastermind, Scholar's Choice. When you go to curriculum sales, I snap this stuff up because this is what kids want to engage with. This is what cements their learning. It is not workbooks and textbooks. As you can see, this is my grade 2 son. We had a battle over assignments that day, and he wrote on there, "I hate mathematics." So when we let it go, he learned to love mathematics. He's now my engineer. So somewhere along the way, he loved mathematics, but he had to learn it experientially, not through workbooks. Now let's look at temperament. Every child is born with a temperament, and that's kind of their how much of personality. So I had 3 very spicy spirited, strong-willed children. I had 1 easygoing child and I had 1 slow to warm up. Guess which one of these is the spiciest? And kids are born with temperament and live with it all their lives. And it's actually a function of their brains. So easygoing children, 40%, have more left frontal brain activity. More spicy temperamented children have more right frontal brain activity. These are the guys that they will, if you get into power struggles with these guys over doing work, they will win. They will outlast you because they're very persistent. So it's knowing what kind of child you have. In addition to their learning style, what kind of temperament are they? These kids really know what they want to do, and you're kind of along for the ride. So work with them. Accept that they are a very spirited temperament and work with them on how to get learning accomplished. The other thing to consider is the environment. Teaching is everywhere. Kids learn from everything, as I presented in the beginning. We live in a very literate society. There are words everywhere. Your child can't help not learning to read. So reading is a skill that's developed between ages 4 and ages 12. The average is around 7, and because that occurs in school, many people think that it's taught. Children have to learn reading by being taught, when in actual, it's a brain function between the occipital lobe, the frontal lobe, and the parietal lobe. These things all work together, that when they see symbols, they can understand the sound for the symbols, and their brain coordinates it to all work together so they can make the sound and read. It's cracking the code is a developmental skill. It's not something that's taught. Every child gets there, but at different ages. Kind of like every child has a different schedule for toilet training. And science and social are, like I said, they're topics that vary with province, countries. A child cannot learn everything in science and everything in social studies and history and geography. They absolutely cannot. So the schools pick and choose content. You can pick and choose content. And more importantly, your learner can pick and choose what they're interested in, because what they're interested in is what's going to be what they remember. And believe me, you have lots of time for the teen years. Grades 1 to 8 science, my kids learned through Magic School Bus. They loved it. They loved it, and they remember that still. Science experiments, not ones that I set up, but they learned just through experiments they set up. And most of social studies, geography, history, they learned through traveling, museums. Get to know those places, science centers, museums, zoos, excellent places to take kids. If you can buy passes, you can go back over and over again. And they will take in what they're able to take in, but it reinforces those brain connections. That's the whole point of content before the teen years, is to build those brain connections. They don't remember much. Now, as my kids are teenagers, we took them traveling, and like this is a concentration camp in Germany, and it was much more. When they're teens, they actually read all the plaques for the exhibits. They go through and they absorb so much more than when they were little. With little, they just wanted to play with things or get out of there. They didn't have much attention span, and that's okay. The other thing too, grades 1 to 9 science, most of that is repeated in high school. So my kids were unschoolers. They didn't take any science before grade 10. And 3 of them went into STEM careers in science. So they can get everything they need to know in grades 10, 11, and 12 sciences. Social studies, same thing. They can pick up little bits of information. Making kids memorize dates, places, capitals, they're not going to remember that unless they use it on a daily basis, unless those brain connections are constantly reinforced. So let them understand what to learn when they learn it, when they need to. There's lots of places, here's some places to get hands-on materials. Math is all around us too. So my unschoolers, they had their first math class grade 7 and 8, skipped grade 9, went on to grade 10, 11, 12 math. That's not that they didn't learn math. They learned math through everyday problems and teachable moments, but they didn't do worksheets or textbooks until the teen years, when they were more able to take what they knew in experiential math and applied it to paper math. That's when they learned how to do fractions on paper, how to do decimals on paper. So I have a really good blog called unschoolingtouniversity.com. And in there is an article called Ways to Learn Math Without a Workbook. And I talk about how they learned all these things through their play, what they chose to play. These things too, they all learned through their play instead of workbooks. Then they began abstract concepts. These things are things kids can learn when they're ready, when their prefrontal cortex is developed and they're starting to get their abstract thinking skills at age 13. And then this was a museum in Australia, and these are water in squares, and you could actually turn this and you can see that the 2 smaller squares, water, can all fit into the big square of water. And it's an experiential learning, but it's a great way to show them how it actually works. This is how a square plus b square equals c square. So the more you can apply experiential learning until age 13, the better they're going to love learning. And teens are much more suited to paper-based work and online work. Okay, so let's talk about some tips. Tip number 1. I realize, by the way, back to tips. I know not everyone's, the easiest way is to say, oh, why don't you unschool and just let your kids decide what they learn? And getting to that point is on a continuum. I got to that point because I just let go the book work, the assignments, and I concentrated on the toddler and the preschooler and just, get everybody fed. But after that year, I saw how much my kids actually did learn. And I made notes and I recorded it. And then I thought, okay, someday I'm going to write a book on this. And as a lot of my kids' unschooling friends went on to university, I thought, this has to get out there. But I realized not everyone wants to unschool. We have to come at it. We have to be assured of it. It's got to be something we have to see. So these tips are if you're going to do more assignments and book work. Perhaps you're on teacher directed or you're on the hub and you're expected to ensure that your child, you're not expected to teach, but it's like homework in your house. You have to make sure your child turns in their homework. So hopefully you'll find these tips helpful. Okay, first, give choices as much as possible. If you can give your kids choice in subject matter, maybe the time they do it, maybe the place they do it, which subject they want to do first, where they want to do it, right? Give them choice. Choice empowers them to have a little power in which they don't have power. Tip number 2, mix it up. A lot of people ask, do you do math every day? So in schools, they do a little bit of math and a little bit of English every day, and then kind of alternate social studies, science. So for the first 3 years, English and math are over 50% of their school instructional time. Like I said, the emphasis is on reading, writing, and arithmetic. So, but you can mix it up too if you want to. If you want to do 2 months of English and then no English and then do 2 months of math, it's up to you. It's your choice. If you're on home education program, you can do things like that. Maybe consider helping the child learn in a different way with an outing or field trip instead of books. Tip number 3, skip it. Give your child the test first, and if the concepts are mastered, move on. You don't have to do busy work at home, right? You don't want your children to be bored. Number 4, present the material in a fun way and geared to your child's learning style. Are they auditory? Are they visual learners? Are they kinesthetic learners? There are lots of ways to present things, and especially if you can buy things secondhand, as much as possible, let the kids play with things. They love to learn through play. And the more you can present it as things to eat, the better. Cookie fractions, pizza fractions, things like that. Number 5, again, follow interests as much as possible. If your child has to write an essay, can it be on Fortnite or Pokemon or whatever they're interested in? Can they choose that topic? Use incentives if they work. Stickers, passes for fun outings, computer time are all things that parents use. You could have a jar of 200 dimes, and every day the child doesn't whine, maybe put in a dime and they get to keep the money at the end of the year. Incentives work. I would suggest incentives rather than punishments. Don't threaten punishments. Build the relationship and the resume comes. Avoid power struggles. Put your relationship first. Listen to why your child doesn't want to do the work. Is it too boring? Is it too hard? Do they not see a point in it? And then attack those reasons. And if possible, talk to the teacher who's assigning these and saying, talk to them. Say you're having trouble, you're struggling. What do they suggest you could do? Use technology. So before my kids could read, I would scribe their stories. So they would draw a picture and then they would tell me what was happening in the story, and I'd be the writer. And we did this, I think they wrote about 100 books that way. I still have them. Maybe I'll scan them and put them up on the Facebook group. But yes, so use technology. If you want to be the scribe while they dictate ideas, try that, or try letting them write on the computer. Especially for little hands, computer is a lot easier than handwriting. And really, my kids never learned to handwrite, and that's probably one thing they did regret when they went on to university and they couldn't handwrite, because universities would ban laptops from the classroom. They couldn't use it for exams, they couldn't use it for taking notes, so they had to actually handwrite, and they were using block letters instead of cursive. So when they wanted to handwrite, they just practiced for a couple months and their handwriting was really, really good. I don't know if I have an example to show you, but I will. So use technology, use speech to text. There's software applications out there for that too. Tip number 9, model curiosity. So if you have a hesitant reader, just pick up a book and start reading out loud, and your child might come by. I find let the child lead. If they get tired of reading, stop. If they get tired of doing anything, stop. Don't force it. They're more likely to come back and do it if it's short and sweet. Make reading fun, cuddle on the couch, use vocal variety, make it the story come alive. Tip number 10, routines. So if you get a routine going, keep it up. But it has to work for you and your child. Not all children are morning people. So be kind but firm, but stick to a routine. Kids do need some structure. Number 11, contracts. This works really good for older children, like grades 4 and up. So have a written contract each week, month, or year. Sign it by the parent and the child. Make sure everybody agrees to it. This is my engineer son who programmed my computer one day, and if I spent too much time on Facebook, this thing would come up. These kids are pretty creative, Tip number 12, entice, not force. So maybe what you can do is, if you're doing studies that the whole family does, but at different levels, work with the child that's most interested in the topic. And the other siblings will join if they're interested. If they're not, wait a while. And again, if you force the topic, the retention of knowledge will be minimal. It'll be time wasted. But interests always come around again and again and again. And don't discount the fact that kids often learn better by discovery than by being told. So things they learn on their own are just as valuable. And when you're interested in the topic, be excited about it, and it can be contagious. Tip 13, learning is in the hands of the learner and is developmental. Now, learning is not this nice sequential start and finish kind of. It's more ups and downs, peaks and valleys. Some months and some years go better than others. Children go through interest spurts and plateaus, and most do not learn in sequential steps. Teachers know this, schools know this, we need to know this. So during a plateau, look at fun, interesting things to do that you will enjoy, and trust that the motivation will come back. Let it go. If you let things go, it doesn't mean that your kids will never ever learn this ever again. It always comes back. Number 14, keep it simple and short. Assimilation of material takes time. You can't do it all in one day, 1 week, 1 month. Plan for playtime, downtime, take lots of breaks. I found keep the session short. Use a timer and have something fun to do after. Short and sweet is always better. 15, meet the basic needs. So make sure everyone's fed, rested, comfortable, non-stressed. So now when my teenager gets up, he sleeps till noon. Well, he used to before he started school this year, but he'd sleep till noon. He'd play some video games for a while. Then I'd feed him lunch, and then we'd go over some math review. That was his best time period. I find my teen kids, when they did online courses, they were much better at night. They would start their classes at 9 o'clock at night. And we agreed. I said to them, if you want any help from us, you have to do this a bit earlier, because I am fried by 9 o'clock at night. So, so we reach compromises, but it helps if everybody's fed and rested and not stressed. And you want to create a learning environment that's fun, good feelings. You don't want it to be a slog. That will totally turn them off learning. Movement. Make sure kids have a lot of exercise. Young kids need to burn energy. So lots of hands-on movement whenever you can. Teaching through movement. Peer pressure. One thing I found is as my kids got into the teen years, they did not want to learn alongside their siblings. They felt peer pressure from them. They wanted more personal help and studies from us, but not with the siblings. So maybe consider that for your older kids. Number 18, again, make it a game, set up a contest, award prizes. The more fun you can make it, the better. My kids, being that we were unschoolers, they would sniff out. If I was trying to do something educational, they would sniff it out and just totally reject it. I get video games that would teach math, specifically teach math. They say, no way, we don't want to play that. They go on to World of Warcraft and learn through their video games. So everything teaches, believe me, everything. Make the world your learning environment. So we had posters in our bathroom. These hung over our toilet because, you know, when kids are boys are using the toilet, what else are they going to look at on the wall? So may as well get them to learn area and perimeter formulas. We had a big family wall here where we hung a map of the world, and this was really handy. So when their dad traveled, we could show them where he was. When the siblings traveled, we could show them where they were. When news happens, we could say, okay, this is what's happening here. This is this country. Very handy to have. Even though we were unschoolers, we had a house filled with resources so that if the kids wanted to know something, it was easily accessible. This is our hallway. It's actually still hanging in our hallway. It's just a decimal number line that the kids looked at every day they walked down the hallway. I think they don't even see it anymore. Then we had a big timeline on our living room wall. So it went from the dinosaur age all the way up to 2000. And that way we could kind of point to where things happened in a point in time. We always kept library books in the car so they'd have something to read while we were waiting. We did a lot of busy bags for waiting times. And while commuting, we played word and numeracy games. I spy, I'm going to Mars and I'm bringing. You know, it's fun time to connect and just, everything teaches. They learn every day. The question is, what will they learn every day? But they do learn every day. And lastly, problem solve and don't punish. You should never punish for not doing the work. You want to create a climate of lifelong learning and enjoying pursuing knowledge. So your job, whether you're a homework enforcer or whether you're a homeschooling parent who actually teaches, your job is to facilitate learning. You can nudge them, but don't force them. Every child takes responsibility for their own learning. This is the problem-solving method, and I actually have worksheets on my website at judyarnall.com. There's a problem-solving worksheet that if you need to get something done, your child's not doing it, you can sit down with them and say, okay, what are your needs with this? What are my needs? Let's come up with some ideas. Let's figure out how we can get this done. So it's not you against them, it's you and them against the issue. So working out things this way. This was a major, major, major discipline tool in our house. And you know what? It's a really good skill. Problem solving is a #1 soft skill that employers are looking for in graduates. So get their creative brain working for you. Here's one question. Can I ask people, can we design a dresser made of 20 working drawers of unequal sizes to fit in a round space? Creativity, you betcha. It can be done. I like what Pat Ferranga always says. He says, don't sacrifice your relationship on the altar of curriculum. Kids will always learn what they need to learn, but you only have a few years to build that relationship. So try again, another day, another way, let it go. You can't stop kids from learning and you can't force kids to learn. The other thing is many homeschoolers never finish a year. And when you look at people's habits, we're procrastinators. We go on vacation, we get company, somebody gets sick, somebody loses a job, we move. These things happen. We take time off to have a baby, and we don't finish the year's curriculum. And you know what? We start the kids next year, next grade, new curriculum. They don't miss anything. They just keep on going. So really, don't worry. They will always get what they need. And at some age, education must become more important to your child than you. That probably won't come until they're teenagers, and very likely the late teens, about age 17 and up. Remember I said that last big incline in the development of the executive function. That's when kids discover all their friends are going off, finishing high school, going on to post-secondary education. That's when they really ramp up what they want to do too. And they're much more motivated. For example, my son now is 18. He's doing grade 10 math. He's super motivated to do it. It's his his second math class. He did one in grade 8. Now he's doing grade 10. He's doing very, very well because he's motivated. He recognizes that's something he wants to do, and he's doing it. So it will happen. There's lots of benefits for home education or at-home learning. You should have these things, and you don't want to wreck that with forcing your kids to do work. Okay, so that's about all the tips I have from an unschooler. But you know what? I mean, too, when kids go to university, I mean, I'm not going to sit there and nag them to do their assignments. That has to be on their shoulders. They have to be motivated to do that. So it does come, but it's recognizing where your child is in development, and is what they're learning, the methods they're learning, appropriate for that. And you can tell that. Okay, so at this point, I would be happy to answer any questions for you. Okay, great. Okay, that seems to be it for questions. So thank you for joining me for this hour. And our next month's webinar is December, and it is on unschooling. So Unschooling 101. So if you are interested in more of that, or you have questions, come out to that, and we will really go in depth into that one. Okay, so good. Well, bye everybody. Have a great month and great rest of the evening. Okay, see you.